Now, but how has lockdown been for you? And have you been in Brussels the whole time?
I got lucky because I had a few trips that I could go away.
Mm.
So I went away a few times, but it was difficult, of course, with all the restrictions and all of this. But I went to Brazil, then I went to Italy, and so it was very sporadic. Like a lot of my works disappeared. I mean, almost everything just disappeared since last March. So it's quite difficult because unfortunately, also here in Belgium, I receive unemployment benefits, but I went to Germany in November and I worked for a month in Germany. And then afterwards, when I came back, then you have to reinscribe to get unemployment benefits.
Mm.
And so somehow in my papers, they didn't like it. They were like, well, you're missing this paper and that paper. And since then, I don't receive unemployment benefits. So that makes it really difficult because now I'm completely dependent on my earnings until this gets resolved. And of course, with Corona, to resolve any kind of official or bureaucratic issue is an absolute joke. It's impossible.
Mm.
I've been sometimes sitting on the phone for 2 hours waiting to speak to a person, and then there's no resolution. So it's that drives me crazy, but it's something we have to deal with these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So initially, when they announced the lockdown, you said you had projects and things that were
Yeah,
cancelled.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything, everything from the summer on, like
Yeah.
last summer on, everything either got pushed much later or disappeared or it went online. And
Mm.
then, of course, the online courses usually meant also a lot less earnings, a lot less hours, and it's impossible to do what I do online. It's
Mm.
really not that kind of work that you can transmit on a screen. It really
Yeah.
does need a personal connection, and I have to be able to guide people in person. So
Mm. Yeah.
yeah.
Because you do a choreography.
Not so much. I teach basically this idea about how the body learns movement. And
Oh.
so I worked with William Forsythe for many years with Frankfurt Ballet. And so there we had these long processes of creative, Billy kind of redefined how the process of creation works. And a part of that was also about how your body perceives movement. So we learned a lot with PNF or martial arts and all of these different disciplines that everybody does now. But we pretty much were the first ones in Frankfurt to really delve into it very thoroughly. It was not just a touch upon, but we really went very deep with these things. And so it gave me a certain sense of actually how to educate dancers rather than train them. For
Ah.
me, there's a big distinction about well-trained dancers and then useful, usable dancers that are actually performing artists, that are not just good movers. And this is what we see today, that everybody is a good mover. You see a lot of them online, you see these Instagram videos, but they aren't usable and useful members of a company. So they can appear very knowledgeable in a short
Mm.
40-second video, but then you try to apply them in a company setting where you have very diverse repertoire, they are not usable. And so
Yeah.
I really try to make this distinction of like, okay, well, if you want to be used and if you want to have a long-term career where you're able to adapt quickly and learn, because by now, in the old days, you could get this knowledge from a company work because there was time enough to engage with a new choreographer for creations. But these days that doesn't exist. A choreographer comes in, it gets 100 hours to set a new piece, and that's not enough for you to really gain a complete insight into relearning the methods they work with. And so you have to come prepared and be able to pick up details, dynamics, sensibilities, and a lot of things. And so I work with more of these parameters to describe what is it that separates a usable dancer from a good mover.
Mm.
And this is more about physicality than anything else. And then it creates also an authentic sense of how to perform, because you can't fake intention. So you work with intention and precision and how you apply your body as this expressive tool basically on stage.
Mm.
It's a complex thing, but this is even describing the workshop is quite, it takes me a while. And of
Mm.
course, it's the practice itself that makes it very clear. Once you do it for a week, 2 weeks, then people start to understand, like, ah, yeah, that's where I lack, that's what I'm missing, that's what I have really a hard time clicking through, or where are my frustrations and how to push through those frustrations, or how to, I can give them a lot of tools to actually frustrate themselves and then learn something that's it's a meaningful tool. It's not just a cover up. So
and you need to be with, I mean, and I understand what you mean, you really need to be in contact
yeah,
with somebody.
yeah,
Cannot do
yeah. Imagine even just to for a very simple exercise, if I try to say to somebody, let's work with resistance in your hands, I cannot transmit that without touching. And that's in fact a very important tool about partnering, or how do you actually react to something and understand how not to anticipate something, how to really be in the moment. You have to be in the moment, so you cannot do it through a lens. So these things for me, of course, these are exactly my jewels, these are my diamonds. I cannot pass them through the camera. Yes.
So this is for you also, I assume, very frustrating that you cannot, because you talk about the touching and this physical closeness, and this is not possible at the moment.
Yeah. And it's how you say, dance is experiential. Your body has to experience it. So again, I worked with people online, but of course, even correcting them is almost just ridiculous, because you're telling them a correction and they understand something, but it's so much faster if we are really face to face, and I can say right there and with them how to correct themselves. Like, to pass information through a video screen, it doesn't work the same way. So yeah, it is frustrating, even when I'm in practice, but
but I also think about the dancers, that what we don't realize is that even if they are at home and they have to do Zoom classes, the walls are very close to them, whereas they're used to space and they're used to moving. And it's not possible to just say, well, you've got a living room, so do a bar exercise
of course
there.
at home.
Because I think there's more about the space that they need around them.
Yes, it's also, well, it's a liberty, of course. Your body senses it. Ritually, your body has a sense of like, well, this is a confined space. I don't have the sense of freedom to fall into movement or tumble or stumble into something. You can't allow yourself. And then in a big room, you can actually, even in a big room, it's a challenge. But in a small room, it's absolutely impossible. And these restrictions that a smaller space gives, I can work with it to a degree. I even use it myself. But then again, to transmit it through a lens, through a camera, it's also not quite the same. It doesn't really generate the same charge, like how you say, the excitement, or there is no charge in a room because there is no room. If you're in a studio, I see the excitement. I can guide people to play with each other and have really a kind of charge, to an electric feeling in the room, like what makes dancing fun, or being in the studio is fun. And that lacks completely. It's impossible to transmit on a small screen. You're not gonna.
Also this what you mentioned now, this contact with each other and this energy. I wonder also if the dancers, or I'm always thinking of these things because we don't know about this, we don't think about this, when we say, well, the artists are at home or the violinist is at home, but the violinist can pick up the violin and still practice in this room, where dancers really have this, since they're training from a very young age, they're always doing it in groups together, and always this energy from each other. And suddenly when you isolate them, it's there's many dimensions really that's affected, not just the fact that that they can't dance, but all these other things.
Is this community? It's kind of dissipates in a way. It's the sense of community and belonging, it kind of goes very strange places. We all feel isolated, really isolated because of it. And then I don't know if there is a solution of how we're going to recuperate ourselves, but I think we will, of course, once this period
Yeah,
passes. I think it will be back to where we used to be. But
yeah.
it was a strange period, I have to say, very strange.
And how did you keep motivating yourself? Because I mean, most of us, the first 2 months, I would say, were, nothing happened. So did you keep on
Yeah,
working on things?
I do my own practice anyhow,
Yeah.
because I'm an independent. I've been working in Antwerpen for some years, then that fell away, and before that, after that, I came back to working independently. So it's always part of my practice that I do what I need, but for my body. Also, I'm 52. I will be now 52 years old. So I know what my body needs, how much do I need, and I don't mind to take the time for myself. That's never been, it's not just discipline, it's a necessity. If you work with your physicality, at some point you understand what is it that you need for your basic, just to be able to feel well enough and get on with the day. And I do that. It's never been really an issue. I miss a little bit that of course, I'd like to go to a studio where it's again much more free space,
Yeah.
but I have actually space. Like I'm lucky, like I have
Oh,
room,
wow. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
can actually do what I need at home,
Mm.
and then go to the gym sometimes. But even this I can do at home a little bit.
Yeah.
So self-motivation in that sense, it's never really been a
Yeah.
problem. I think it's part of my personality also, that I've always been disciplined enough to kind of kick my own ass. I know I need it, otherwise I get
Yeah. Yeah.
unwell.
Yeah. So, and when you started doing projects again, of course, everything changed now, and the dancers have to
Mm.
wear masks probably, and
Yeah.
things like that. Um, could you still work but have this social distancing in mind, or was it?
Well, this project that I've done in Germany, so of course, ideally we could only do the project if we agree to all of the social distancing, wearing masks, disinfecting our hands every time, and you do it to the degree that you can, obviously. But then of course, it's impossible to do it 110%. It's absolutely impossible. And luckily we went through the whole project without any issues. Nobody got sick. It was a smallish group of, we were 9 performers plus a few other people around, and we kept social distance to a degree, because some of us ended up agreeing that, well, we will touch each other because we also live in the same apartment, so we are okay. And so we kind of did the best we could. But again, I don't think, if we had to keep it really 100%, it would not have happened. It would not have been possible to move forward. Like at that point, it's impossible to really, it wouldn't have been enjoyable at all. That's for sure. We would have hated our lives. And then also the end result would have been something that you can't feel like, well, that's a great, joyous performance where everybody's 1.5 meters apart and we are only doing this restriction. I've seen another show though where they've done it, and it had exactly what I thought it would. It was boring and very kind of, okay, they've done everything they possibly could, and then you just wait for them to do everything they possibly could, and if there was nothing inspired about it, then that's the problem.
Yeah. And do you find that the dancers were a bit anxious in the beginning to be so
Yeah.
close?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. Some people more than others, of course. Some people really take it to heart, and they're very, very conscious of, like, keep the distance, don't touch me, wear your mask, wash your hands. And then others less so. Myself, I know that I wasn't so. I mean, I really do the best that I can, but I also feel like, well, if I do get sick, hopefully I'm not going to end up in a hospital. Maybe my body is strong enough to fight off an infection, and So I try not to drive myself crazy with it completely, but I do the best I can. That's I think the best.
Yeah, I think I think you find it overall, you know, some people are really, really anxious about this,
Yeah,
and some people are just more relaxed and
yeah,
not careless, but just
yeah,
thinking,
but
well,
a
you
little
know,
bit more like,
do the
okay,
best you can up to a point, but still that, you
try
know,
to
normality, yeah, have
somehow, yeah.
normality, yeah, yeah.
And that balance is quite delicate, I have to say, especially when you're in a group like this. That was also something to negotiate, that yes, well, we have to respect those people that really want it very strictly adhered to, and then the people who are a little bit more lax. So we have to really find our dynamics and find how to navigate those rules. But it was okay. Mind you, we all knew each other. In
Yeah.
that group, we all knew each other long enough, so it was not really an issue. So it was okay.
Um,
But mhm,
yeah, did you also find that the third lockdown, or the this last
mhm.
part, was more difficult for you than the first one?
Yes, yes. Every one of them gets a little bit worse because my situation gets worse. You know what I mean? Every single time that I have a job coming in and then somebody says 2 weeks later, like, well, this is postponed. Again, I cannot plan my future. I cannot, I don't see right now. I really don't see how am I going to manage my future months. I have no vision. And normally I do have at least an idea of like, well, here and there I have some jobs. I know I will not starve, or if I need to borrow a little bit of money for a while until I know I can tide myself over. Now I have no vision, no cue of how can I manage. And that's getting more and more difficult the longer this goes on. Because at some point you're like, well, how long is it gonna go on? I still don't know when am I gonna get a vaccine? Does that going to free me? Am I going to be still free to travel? And whether I'm free to travel, is it allowed for me to do what I do, to really go into a room and work with people? And I still don't know. This next
Yeah,
year is very up in the clouds still.
yeah,
So that's very difficult mentally to handle. I have to say that this takes a lot of calm yourself down and try to figure it out, that what's your support system. And then of course it's nothing to do with the government. It has nothing to do, the support comes only from private friends and people that are capable to actually see your difficulties. But I received zero government help, none. Like I know some people applied for some kind of artists help and this and that, and I've got none of it. So this is
yeah.
also
Does that make you feel that art is not valued? Many artists say that, you know, that the governments, the support, not just financial support. So some people do receive some,
mhm,
you know, kind of money, but
yeah.
that's more, yeah, to do now with uh, the theaters that need to open, or
Mm,
artists that have the ability to, or should have the ability to at least do smaller concerts or some sort of
mm,
concert.
yeah.
But it's almost as if I heard today that now I think it was in Germany, or now I cannot remember where it was, but that the cinema opened. You know,
Mhm,
people can go to the cinema with a mask. So,
yeah.
you know, if I'm thinking that if the theaters do so much effort to try and make it as safe as possible, every
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
I speak to,
Yeah.
all the conductors tell me this, you know, how the theaters and
Yeah.
everybody works together
Yes.
to make it
Yes.
safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, here, you know, I'm in contact with La Monnaie, with Peter de Calouet. He's running La Monnaie, the opera house here. And they've done everything in their minds and their possibilities according to the government's requirements to make everything, and 100% they can prove it, that there were no corona instances, it was safe, it was okay. Still they couldn't do performances. So it really then becomes this la la land crazy idea of like, yes, but they have in the parks, hundreds of people are sitting without masks on a Sunday when the sun is out. So how it's very inconsistent. And of course that really does drive everybody crazy of like, well, that's our livelihood. You're basically killing us off for no reason. And that really upsets me too. I really also feel like, well, you know, this strange state of like, I have no idea whether I'm ever gonna get back to some kind of a stable status or a place where I can manage my life from my expertise. Or do I have to suddenly retrain and become a massage therapist because I cannot give what I have because there's no place for it? And not out of my fault, but because regulations and inconsistent regulations stop me from doing it. And so that's difficult to handle, but it's again, there's nothing I can do. So I try to do my little Buddhist meditations and let's say like, look, just breathe. Today you're here, you still have food in the fridge. So it's like that. It's very day to day. And yeah.
But do you think sometimes there's this not really knowing or understanding what the life of an artist is, you know, that you talk about something that, again, you know, you've studied and you've had a dance career, and you've studied and furthered your studies, how to do it. So you are very specialized in what you do. But if you compare yourself to somebody in another industry, for example, we have an idea that, say, for instance, architect, or well, architects also are artists, but what I'm just saying, we have an idea, architects study for a long time and then they do all this work, and we see the buildings, but you know, when it's a dancer or a musician, you never know how, well, I wasn't aware how many years a musician study. I have a little bit of an idea what the dance world is like, and I know how, you know.
Are you not a dancer yourself?
No, I'm not a dancer.
Are you not? Oh, okay. I thought you were, that you're a former dancer, that somehow you... Okay, how interesting.
Two of my children are ballet dancers, and this is actually what inspired me to start the project initially, because I saw what they went through. But you know, and you know, they start at a young age, go to vocational school at a young age. You know, they don't have that childhood that normal children have. I say normal children, but you know, the normal childhood. You know, and somehow I don't think people, when people talk about ballet, the only thing that they talk about is you know, the feet of the dancers. That's terrible, or you know, like that, or
the pirouette is nice, and then they hope not hope that.
you know, and and so I sometimes wonder if it's about not knowing, not understanding what artists do, you know, that people have this ignorance almost.
I mean, you know, from what I think is a little bit of again, the expertise of an architect is very clear because it's put into a building. Our expertise is put into something that's in fact, it's just there because you observe it and then it's gone. Even if there's a recording, somebody will look at it later, but then there's newer performances coming along. So ours is very transient of what you put your expertise into. Music is better than dance. Dance keeps coming and going. We look back a little bit on some spectacular older performances, but most of it, 99% of it, is gone the moment it's done. So our expertise is valued very differently because it's very transient in a way. And although it's no less high level and it's no less effort than an architect, in fact, it's a lot more effort, I think, because you have to consistently keep going with it. It's not possible for you to say like, well, I have it, I'm just gonna sit on it and build the buildings I always do. You constantly have to evolve with it and change as your body changes, as the requirements change. So this is a very interesting subject. I think I always feel like artists aren't really valued particularly well because there's so many. because obviously it's a very everybody goes into it with this idea of like, of course I want this connection to an audience, of course I want to express myself, I want the freedom, so I put the right effort into it. But the moment it becomes also a business transaction of like, well, how do we recuperate and remunerate you for your expertise, that comes into popularity, that comes into the marketings, that comes into all of these different parameters that aren't really the job of an artist, but it's very much part of your life, and it's very much part of the business of making a living. And so it becomes a very how you say, that's a very sad reality for many of us, to say like, well, I know what I have, people that I engage with know what I have, but I will still never make the money an architect does. And it's a strange place. I might be happier than an architect though. And then you know, that's we keep telling it to ourselves that like, oh yeah, it's worth it for the arts, and it's worth somehow it's worth it. But I question that also. Is it really? Because maybe it doesn't, maybe it does.
No, but I think now also this is really what I thought about a lot while I was photographing all the artists, is where is the solution? You know, where, because I hear all these stories, and I think personally it has to start with education. I can see, yeah, I can see absolutely that, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
art art should be a subject
Yeah.
alongside
Yeah.
maths and science.
Yeah.
For example, I was useless in maths. Useless. I
So
just,
I,
yeah.
my brain
and,
doesn't.
yeah, and even physics, you know, it. But when there was drama club at the school, or when they performed something, I was there, and the choir and things like that. And I'm a practical person, you know, but there wasn't, but really the school system was always for the maths and the science. It was always
Yes.
the
Yeah.
maths and the science.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I heard also recently from somebody who told me how many hours her daughter has to sit and do maths just because she
Yes.
wanted to go to a good school.
Well, yeah.
And you think, so when schools start making the criteria to get into a good school, you have to be good in maths, or you have and German. That was the two
Yeah.
subjects. And what about all these children who are, you know, so
Talented.
artistically
Yeah. Yeah.
talented or interested? I think we're all
Yeah.
in artists in a way, but you know, some people really need that to express
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And I think our school system is based on the system the way they want during the industrial era. And now, you know, now we need to be broader, and we need to
Yeah.
acknowledge more and say,
Yeah.
yeah.
I completely agree with you, because I think it's one of the main, you know, we are running out of jobs. There's no jobs to do, because everything is automated, everything gets like, there's never gonna be enough jobs for everybody to be busy in their lives. And arts, making any kind of arts, even just to learn an instrument, it gives you purpose. It really does give you a sense of achievement, and that achievement also validates you. It also allows you to validate other people's efforts. So I find it's absolutely essential to give that opportunity to young people to engage with whatever form of art, even if it's, because maybe one will not like to sing, but he will like to dance, or he likes to draw, or likes to just to take pictures. One way or another, people connect into some form of art, even if it's just rapping, or you know what I mean. There's so many options to engage with creativity and really put effort into it and feel, I achieved it, I've done something with it. And I think that's really for our humanities is absolutely essential. And I think everyone knows it, but somehow it hasn't been really considered in a serious manner to say like, well, let's give this opportunity in our school systems, rather than always extracurricular. That's after
Yeah.
school. That's, you do it when your parents want you to do it. I have to say that in Ungarn, I was very lucky, because I went to the ballet school in Budapest at 12 years old. And then we were obliged, of course, to see performances, and we were given the opportunity. In Hungary, it was very scarce to see Western movies. They didn't exist. So if we were so curious to know, like, well, where can I see something? So you could go to the Italian Institute or the French Institute and watch a French movie or an Italian movie, and we've seen 2 in a year. And then, of course, it was this absolute mind-blowing experience to see a Pasolini movie or see something from Visconti. It's like, wow, but how beautiful, how incredible this thing is. And it definitely did charge me up. It gave me a sense of aesthetics. It gives me a lot of things. Even I didn't know it back then. It did affect my sensibilities. And so I think that happens to kids also. Like, yeah, the moment you give them the opportunities to see live performances, they will get something out of it for sure. Even if they're immature and they don't really get it, they will get an experience that will later on somehow give them tools and things.
Yeah, I also, it's really, I was actually surprised to see how only recently the experiments have been done to prove how music and dancing and well, different forms of art affects the brain or develops the brain.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the brain, there's an experiment done in Germany where the brain waves of the musician was monitored, and then also of the audience, and it was the same type of affection effect. And so, you know, that means that even the audience, even if you're in the audience, you know, it has an effect on you.
Yes. It's, you know, with dance, we had a lot of neuroscientists working with us in Frankfurt. And this was one of the things that I also learned back then, that when you watch dance, your brain perceives it the same way as if you were doing it. Even if your body doesn't do it, you recognize the coordination, you recognize the speed, the dynamics, you recognize everything that happens. And so your body vicariously experiences dance, and it's measurable. It's not a theory. It's very clearly, that's why we like to see dance and like to see good dancing, in fact. And so, yes, it gives you all of this incredible nourishment, in fact, even if you don't do it. And it's the same with music. You listen to music, and of course it elevates you because you experience it in, how you say, vicariously, but also it goes very, very deep. It is your whole nervous system that gets it. And that's, I think it's it's a no-brainer that we need more of it rather than sort of dismissing it.
And also the fact that music, that they found that music affect the cells of the body.
Yeah.
You know, up to the cell level.
Yeah.
And then you think, now we're in a pandemic where we really need to think about people's health and not just, you know, the physical, but the mental, you know, and I would think if there is already so much evidence that, for example, you know, there's therapies for autism in music and dancing and Alzheimer's, and so then there must be some acknowledgement to say, let's open the theaters, because there are now many people in this situation who you know, who need this upliftment, and not just the artist but also the audience members.
The audience, of course. There is really, that exchange has to happen. So yeah, I absolutely agree. It really is essential. I think so too. But, you know, I always wonder, who are the people who make those decisions, and on what criteria do they base their things? Because like I say, here in Belgium, it's very strange, because Peter, who I was talking to from Lebanon, he's like, well, we are there, we can prove it, it's clear. We've done everything that they required of us, and everything is fine, and all of this is provable, and still they don't allow them to open. And he's like, well, what can I do? They try to plan a season without knowing how the season's gonna go. And it's mind numbing. They are also, it's difficult on the people, and the audience wants it. People
Yeah,
keep asking for it also, of course.
but maybe it's also because of the generation, you know, that we say that's the generation where people, or this generation of politicians maybe who makes these decisions, maybe have not been exposed to art in such a way as maybe previously.
Well, to be honest, I don't think so. I think politicians are by nature, that is what they do. They wait until things resolve themselves, because they can never make an unpopular decision or make a decision that would hold them accountable. This is my experience here in Belgium, which is what I really lived with for 2 years, that people would not make accountable decisions around me. I had to make it for them. And although I succeeded to a great degree, at the end, they kind of pushed me out of it after I succeeded. They said like, oh, no, but you're not the right person for this job. And I was like, well, actually, who is it then? Because there was no one beside me, no one around me who made any kind of accountable decisions. I've made them all myself. But I realized that that's politics. That is what politics by nature is, that people just figure it out. You make a decision for me that you can be held accountable for. And if that works, we are friends. If it doesn't work, then, oh, I had nothing to do with it. And so that's politics. It's not necessarily the individual. That's the nature of how politics work, that they will not make decisions that they can be held accountable for. So they leave it. They're like, yeah, well, tell us more. We'll discuss this later. Let's see deeper into it. And then it gets pushed off until it destroys everything. But no one's gonna make the decisions like that can be in any way accountable. That's what I find here in Belgium.
Oh, okay.
That was my personal experience, and I keep seeing it because, like I say, Peter knows very well that he can do it. He's no questions, but still people wouldn't make the decisions like, well, now you can open. No, they keep holding off because something might happen.
Yeah.
So it's, that kills us. That does kill us. Yeah.
But Tamas, on a lighter note, did you do anything exciting this lockdown? You know, like started cooking or baking or buy chickens?
Of course. Did everything that you say. Did all of those things, like everyone. Of course, cooking like up a storm. And I mean, I was, I'm lucky because I live alone. So I absolutely did not respect the when they were saying like, oh, you can only have 2 people come to your house. I was like, yes, right. Who's gonna check? So I had people coming and going, of course, not like crazy thing, but it was definitely more than what they recommended. So I was like, I'm responsible for myself. I want to stay sane. I want to see few people, but keep seeing them and do what I can. And like I say, I was lucky that I actually did get to go away a few times. So that kept me more or less like, okay, at least a week here, a week there. And then that somehow I got through it. If I had to be home the whole year, I would have hung myself for sure. There's no way. It's too much for anybody. So, yeah, on a lighter note, I don't know. I try to keep myself somehow. I always been responsible for myself. Like I don't have an authority figure around me to tell me this is how you have to do it. I listen a little bit, but
okay.
I need.
I started fermenting food. I probably fermented every single vegetable that you find on this earth.
But that's amazing. That's so cool. So you can move to Korea. That's what it's super cool.
My son lives with me, and he was so annoyed with that because I just keep on fermenting.
But how fantastic!
But yeah, I think it's this. But it comes with the times, that when I think it's this. But with me, it's always this thing, a different focus from the reality, and the fermentation was a bit of a break for me from reality.
But how the hell did you find that? How did you find this?
What?
To ferment stuff.
How did that? Well, I started long ago with sauerkraut. I started fermenting my
Yeah, of course.
sauerkraut. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I heard that you could actually also ferment onions. And then I fermented onions, and then it started getting carrots and um,
Excellent.
mushrooms and
Yeah.
tomatoes. And
Mushrooms you can do also.
you can, but that's actually very nice. Yeah. Now I must
Really?
say that's very nice. And
Fermented
um,
mushroom.
sweet potato, and yeah, no, the whole lot.
Yeah, it's
Broccoli,
amazing.
yeah.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
so it's yeah,
Send me
it's
some.
well,
If there's
it's
too much.
yeah. No, it's really it's actually nice, you know, it's a
It's
nice
super healthy. It's really good
and,
for
and
you.
very healthy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sauerkraut, I love it. I mean, I
Oh
always
yeah,
in Germany I got into it and I was like, yum yum yum. In the winter, it's you have to have it.
yeah.
It's good stuff.
Well, it's so easy to make, really, that I mean, it's really easy to ferment, you know,
Yeah.
anything. And
Now I'm
and
gonna
I
look it up also.
yeah, yeah, there's so many YouTube videos
Yeah.
about fermenting. Yeah, that's it's amazing what you can do. And I do find it very healthy, and I think and I mean, it's just that's the thing, you know, it's this it fascinates me, the process of
Yeah.
fermenting as well.
It
Yeah.
takes a while, doesn't it?
Well, I would say about a week, 2 weeks. It's very potent. Then apparently it's more healthy. The longer it sits, the more healthy.
Ferments, the
Yeah,
better it
yeah.
becomes. Ah,
And but yeah, after a week already, you can eat.
you
Yeah,
can. Interesting.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know it from Korea because I used to go to Seoul quite a lot. And of
mm,
course, in Korea, they really ferment everything. That was how they used
yeah.
to store food for the winter. And so they ferment also everything. Kimchi is, of course, number one, but they ferment everything, like you say.
Mm,
And I loved it. It's good food. It's really healthy.
yeah, yeah.
Very good for you.
Now, I think there was somebody who did research in the beginning of the century, of the 20th century, and
Mhm.
he figured out that, well, he saw that cultures where they ferment food, the people
Mhm.
actually lived longer.
Ah, yeah, makes sense,
Yeah.
of course.
So
Yeah.
I thought I
Give it
want
a
to
go.
live till I'm 112, so it's a good start here for me.
Please. Good. But you look amazing, huh? That's for
Oh,
sure.
thank you.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. No,
Beautiful.
I told my children that I want to be that grandmother that makes sure that
Yeah.
my grandchildren are
Yeah.
raised well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
That's so
figured out
important.
I have to live till 112 to
Oh,
accomplish that. Yeah.
fair enough. It's doable.
Yeah.
It does exist.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, yeah, it's I think we can live longer. I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely just a mental thing as
Yeah.
well, you know.
There needs to be a desire and there needs to be a community. I think that's one of the most important part of it, that you're somehow part of a community that's, yeah, I don't remember really, but I remember reading a little bit on this whole idea of why do certain small communities in Japan live to be so old, and it has something to do with their community and
Oh,
their sense of purpose within this community. And of course they have to be happy and healthy and have something to do, like
mm,
whatever that is, just
yeah.
gardening or doing some small tasks. It keeps
Mm,
people mentally focused and keeps them there,
mm.
and
Well,
they
when I turned 50, I decided that I would see that as my second life,
Hmm,
you
interesting,
know,
yeah,
so that you live from 1 to 50, and then from 50 onwards is the next
onwards,
part.
yeah,
So that makes you feel younger also, when
yeah,
then you think, okay, so you are 51, so you are only in the beginning of your new
yeah,
life then. Yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah.
but this is also, this was a strange thing to, again, in this period, it's such a weird thing to go through, of like, well, I am 51, I
Mm,
got to some place with everything I've done before. It really helped me, supported me, gave me an amazing life, fantastic experiences. But now what? Like, how am I going to continue? Like, I never had this. Well, funnily enough, I never had a choice. Like, I never decided, like, God, I want to be a dancer. For me, it came as an opportunity purely because it was the only way out from where I was living. It was literally moving away from the city where I live in, could only happen through dance. So I went into it. I was good enough, put all this effort into it. I enjoyed it. I do enjoy it. But it's never been a conscious choice of what do you want to be. And it was a very funny thing to come to this realization, like, well, actually, I never chose this. It kind of came, and it was amazing. But what do I want? What is there really something else that I want? And so I'm still having this very strange moment of, I'm in a cloud of, like, what really do I want with the second half? And how do you define that? What are the right efforts? So for that, I have to say the confinement is also good to give yourself the time to self-reflect and think along those terms. Because when you're busy doing things, of course you don't engage with any of those thoughts. And then when you're not busy, it's good to give into this sense of self-reflection and understanding, like, well, okay, this is where I am. These are my realistic opportunities. This is what I can deal with, and this is what I cannot deal with. So, good things, bad things in everything.
Yeah, but many artists say this, that they thought about, what am I doing? Is this what I really want to do? And then, then they figured out, yes, that this is what I want to do. And I think it's when that part kicked in, I almost see it as people saw the first part of lockdown as, okay, maybe it's just time to, breathe and relax a little bit, and we are forced to stop, because otherwise they don't stop, and then they're forced to stop. I'm just going to, take it easy. And I think then came these phases where they started thinking, but what next, and this unsurety, and then, is this really what I'm meant to do, or what if I can't do it anymore? I think that was more the thing. What if I cannot be this artist anymore? And then I think then that started, and I almost have this sense, as the time went on, I could sense when the anger started, this anger, to not anger in an aggressive way, but this frustration more from, when can we do this now? We want the theaters open, or we want to do the concerts, and I could sense that in the time also, and also when I spoke to people, I could feel this, this frustration.
It's frustrating. Yeah, that's incredibly frustrating, because it is. It becomes our very essence. Of course, when you're an artist and you're a creative person, it does come from within. It comes something that manifests through you to do whatever it is that you do. If you just do silly little drawings, but it's something you manifest, and you know that it's yours. You know that it's your essential part of your expression, self-expression. And then if you're denied that, that's incredibly frustrating and incredibly damaging also, I think. So I understand. I really empathize with that. And it's, every creative person knows it. Every creative person will acknowledge it. But if you're not, then you have no concept of what to do with it. And I think that's also the problem, when the politicians, they're like, well, we don't care, you just do some stupid, you're a bunch of fucking clowns, we don't care, you do your shows on the stage. It's completely meaningless to them. Or the musicians' practice, it can be completely meaningless to someone who simply doesn't care that it takes 8 hours alone at home to practice the violin so you can do a concert. It's a different way of existing.
Yeah, and this is why I'm also thinking that if artists speak more about this before the show, what I mean is, we see you on stage, and we see that part,
Yeah.
but we never see this
Yeah.
other part where, yeah.
Yeah, how you say the efforts that it takes to
Mm.
produce effortlessness is invisible. We make it invisible, of course, and I think it should be invisible. To be honest, I don't think it should be. It shouldn't take the focus away from the effortlessness, because the moment you look at it, the effortless, and know the effort behind it, you see it differently. It's the same with gymnastics. If you know what it takes, then you don't see it with the same pleasure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think in the sense that you have to see the struggle. You know, it's not that I want to say you have to make a drama of it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more of telling how they, you know, like there is some obstacles, there is some difficult times, but it's also the rewards. You know, I made it through, and I almost think if more people speak about it, then it's the inspiration. Because what I got from art, from this whole process, what I also kept thinking about was artists are actually the best equipped for this time. You know, you take yourself for an example. You are self-motivated. You know exactly what you want for yourself. You're conscious of your body. You are conscious of your ability, of what you able to do. You can overcome obstacles. You have overcome many obstacles already by now. I mean, just if you think, if you talk about auditions, about not always, you know, I know, this is what I know about the dancing world. You don't always get the part that you want. You know, and you know, you sometimes they want something so bad, and then somebody else got chosen, and they have to get over that and still work. So you're, as an artist, you are constantly in that situation where you have to pick yourself up and just get on with it.
Get on with it. Yeah, it's true.
And those skills, I think, are so valuable. If you think, if we could have children experience those things for the first part of their lives and in school, say for example, and they understand what it is to have failure, to overcome that, to stand up again and do it again and do it again until you know.
I completely agree with you on this. Yeah. I wonder how it could be done, though, because the only thing that I meant is to say not to focus on the effort, but on the effortlessness of the actual art. Is that I think simply by looking at good art, like taking children to exhibitions, taking kids to the theater, does that already. It does inspire, it does give them the idea. So I really agree that that should be an essential part of every educational system, to make sure that kids see art. Kids see good high quality art. Like in Hungary, I have to say that this was the case, that when we went to the ballet school, we were obliged to see performances, and we were obliged to see certain historical movies, and then you go to the exhibitions. But we are in an artistic environment, so of course we are part of it. But the general school system had nothing to do with this, and I think that's a big failure. That's a big mistake, because it does create everything you just said. It does create discipline, self-awareness, this essential skill of resilience, to know that, like, well, a denial or a refusal isn't the end of the world, and you don't have to break down. You continue, and you're like, well, the next one maybe. So these are really, really, how you say, it's a great tool for our common evolution as people. I really believe it, that it does raise us from a lot of how you say, like, you're speaking of anger. Of course everybody has anger, but if you have something that also gives you focus, that anger is much easier to handle than if you have nowhere to go and you're just angry. I mean, of course kids become destructive and self-destructive, so that's a no-brainer, absolutely. But I wonder who's going to make these decisions, and I wonder who's going to, maybe you. Hopefully, Petra, you're going to write.
Working on it. I'm working on it. I think I believe in energy, and I believe I believe that, you know, if we talk about these things, if we talk about solutions, and people start thinking on that, and we really have to plant the seeds, for it to grow.
Yeah,
We really have to
yeah.
just think. Well, I just have a camera, and I took 400 pictures over the lockdown time,
Wonderful,
and
wonderful.
there was, here are trains, here are buses. It took me from the one side from Vienna to the other side. So
Mhm.
everything was possible, for
Yeah,
me to do it.
yeah.
I did not realize that I was going to do it. Initially, I was going to do 50 pictures, but
Mhm.
I never knew it was going to be this. I never knew I was going to talk to people on
Yeah.
Zoom. But I think, if it has to start,
Mm.
it has to start with one thing that will, like when you throw a stone in the water,
Yeah,
and the
it's
wrinkles,
ripples.
the ripples.
Yeah.
But then again, I live on cloud nine, so I think everything is possible.
Well, yes, but everything is possible. I think that's what a lot of
Yeah,
people forget. It's just figuring out the kinks, and then if you have the right direction, it's working
yeah,
towards that, and then see where you land. But you'll still land somewhere closer to where you want to
yeah.
get to. Maybe not exactly, but somewhere
Mm,
nearer. And I think it's worth the effort. It's wonderful for
yeah.
you to also
And
recognize.
I grew up in a town, in an industrial town in South Africa, that
Oh, wow.
yeah, and we didn't have a theater. We didn't
Wow.
have, yeah, and there wasn't all these possibilities. There was
Mhm.
one ballet school, like a ballet.
Yeah.
It was a Bart Simon was his name. He had a little ballet school.
Mhm.
I think it was him and his wife, and they were piano teachers, and there wasn't much cultural things going on there,
Yeah.
and um, and I think there are many places in the world, many towns in the world where children don't have the opportunity to go
Yeah.
to a big theater,
Yeah.
and they should have the possibility to experience art in whatever form it is, but
Yeah.
they have to have it. They have to have that experience,
Yeah.
and I think that would be wonderful if you think, if one day it could be like every school in the world would give the child not just the opportunity to learn maths and science, but also the opportunity to learn different forms of art, so that
Yeah.
they could express themselves
Yeah.
in a way, and also that they could appreciate art then afterwards. If they don't decide to
Yeah.
go into an art uh, direction, that they could
Yeah.
at least appreciate it,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This is so. Yeah, of course. Kids will experience different arts differently. This is also very clear that some kids gonna respond to beautiful paintings or fashion, or some will like music and rap music or classical music, but it does give them this opening and this recognition that there is all of that opportunity, and all of that kind of effort is really essential. And
Yeah.
yeah, like for me, it was also this thing when I grew up in Hungary. I grew up in a very small town in Esztergom, and there was nothing. I mean, there was no theater, there was nothing. Absolutely, I never seen dance on television because there was no TV. I did gymnastics, kind of, and that was the only thing I knew. And then suddenly, this whole thing with dance came, and I had no concept of what I'm going into. But then through dance everything came. Like then I was like, oh yeah, I like paintings, I love drawing, I love music, I really like this kind of music. And so you that was just an opening, and then everything else came through that door to me also, to be able to appreciate it
Mm.
and to really connect into it in a much deeper manner than just gymnastics or doing
Well,
dive board or
yeah.
diving.
Well, that's already a great example for how that, like you say, open doors,
Yeah,
into
yeah,
other
yeah,
forms of
yeah,
art as well.
yeah.
That's
So very
great.
cool.
Yeah,
And tell
that's,
me, so you live in Vienna now?
yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
Vienna
yeah,
is amazing. Vienna is
yeah,
wonderful. I
yeah,
like.
yeah.
It's a
Have you
really
been?
imperial city. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Have you
yeah.
been here?
I've been
Sorry.
there a lot because I've
Oh,
been,
okay.
you know, a lot because I grew up in Budapest. Of course, the ballet
Yeah.
school was in Budapest, and then we
Mm.
used to hitchhike, in fact, to Vienna on weekends for parties,
Oh,
and then
okay.
yeah, like very bad kids.
Mm.
Yeah, but I've been there quite a lot, and it's a really nice city. Vienna is great.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I love it here. It's beautiful and
And
yeah.
but then tell me a bit, what do you do normally? What did you end up doing in life from South Africa? How did you get to Vienna?
Well, I studied teaching initially,
Hmm.
um, and then we moved to England
Hmm.
in 2001.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, my children grew up there in England. Two of my children went to the Royal Ballet School there. They
Wow.
trained there, yeah. And then the other, yeah.
That's a tough one. That's also hardcore, huh? That's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I have, yeah. This is off the record now, but I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the
Yeah,
Royal Ballet School. Yeah,
it's a tough one. I'm sure it is.
I think, I think, in a way, it's. I know it's the best, or they've got excellent dancing education there,
Yeah.
but I think, in a way, they take away some artistic things from
Hmm.
children. You know,
Mm.
that's I think the pressure on some children are just so severe, and it's not just, you know, I hear that from many children saying that, you know, many children that talk about this after, only after they've come to a company and have,
Mm.
you know, experience in a different way,
Yeah.
but
This
you
is,
know, but
if I may tie into this, it's very interesting you're saying it because I will tell you that the pressure is good. I say
mm,
it from my example because I went through a similar school in Hungary where the pressure was every half a year kids were kicked out. If your body wasn't perfect, you were gone.
yeah,
So really a lot of pressure mentally, but the pressure builds within you also this desire to go against that pressure. And so it actually does develop also this resistance within you to say like, well, screw you, I
mm,
will do it my way eventually and find a way. And you do. Funnily enough, I have found my way absolutely not where I wanted to go to, but 100 times better. I ended
mm,
up working with Jan Fabre. I ended up working with William Forsythe, even though I really, my entire school year, I was absolutely certain that classical ballet is the only thing I want to do. It's the top, it's the best, it's the only thing that exists. And if you don't do classical ballet, it's something less.
mm,
Suddenly, I had another opportunity that I had to take because I had no other opportunity. And then I realized like, oh, okay, there is another world. There is something completely different. And what's the surprise? It feels 100 times better. I'm much more at ease, but all my skills are absolutely usable.
mm,
I can rely on them. I can apply to them. Sometimes they were hindering me rather than supporting me because, of course, it's indoctrination, how they are taught. It's
yeah,
not, this is the big difference about what I say about training and education. I
mm,
want to stay away from training. I'm not interested in dogs that can do
mm,
specific tasks and remember them and then try to be an artist on top of that. It's a very different thing than being able to pull forward your authentic self and
mm,
present that on stage. Now that I've never learned in school. It was
mm,
never required. It was never, you could illustrate what your authentic self is, but you were not allowed to be yourself. And it's
mm,
the same in the Royal Ballet, in the Paris Opera Ballet, in Berlin
yeah,
Ballet, every ballet school, that's their system. But what it also does, because of this pressure, it also pushes those kids in a very good way. I have to say that if I look back on it, it was very hard to survive. And it must be for you as a parent to see your child going through it. It must be very difficult.
mm,
But rather than say, oh, well, I'd like to take this experience away from you, tell them, push through it, complete it, don't give up on it. It will not last forever. know it that eventually you will get the hell out of there, and you'll find your way. There are examples. Most people do find their you find your tribe. You find the people that think like you, work like you, and it's organic in a way. I have to say, like, it happened in a completely, well, maybe I'm lucky, but it did happen in a fairly organic manner, that I got to where I finally felt like, okay, this is much more free. This is much more rewarding.
For my children, the advantage was that I didn't want them to do ballet. I want them to be at home.
ah, that's that's so funny.
I wasn't
At least
I
you're an
wasn't
honest mom. You were not a stage mom, for sure. That's
I
fantastic.
wasn't a ballet mom. And then when they complained about something, then I said, but just come home to me.
They were like,
No.
these days it's difficult because young dancers, when I came around, people would change still quite a lot. You would go like, well, this company's repertoire I don't like, I'm going to go to the next one. And we had the opportunities. This is all gone also. Now you end up with a job, you hold on to it for dear life, because they never know if there's the next one. And now that's got much worse. Now that suddenly got much worse. So that's a strange world that we are entering into, that we're making dancers for no opportunities whatsoever, because there's hardly any left. And my main issue also with the whole dance education thing is that it's more and more about the academics of it. The academia is taking over of the running the institutions. So it's a lot of people who've never experienced any kind of real career that become the leaders of institutions, that then trains the next generation for no career, because they have no concept of what an actual career trajectory is, what it is to, what is the world they really enter into it, and how to prepare for them. Because the world's changed completely. Like by now, you know, there's more dance we see on Instagram than anywhere else. You know what I mean? There's definitely, the audience moved away from live performances to watching dance online or on TV. And so the exposure of a general audience is on TV, dancing with the stars. So they think that's the pinnacle of artistry as well. And then the reality is like, well, those kids will never actually make it in a job market. They can become maybe teachers for a few months or seasons before the next one comes along. And so it's a different world.
Listen, Thomas, I just want to ask you one more thing. What is your wish for when this is all over?
That I can build my own school with my own program.
Oh, wow. What a great wish.
I'd love to. Yeah, because I realized that, like, you know what? I am very good at what I do. The teaching, like, I'm very good at actually helping people and getting them the right information to get them click and help them to make good choices for themselves. And I never found the environment. I always thought like, well, I should find a school that hires me and gives me the space. And then you realize that it doesn't exist. There's no school that's going to give me the space. They give me a little space here and there, and they want results. And I'm like, yes, but that's not how this works. I can show you tricks. I can give you a few small breakthroughs, but to people really to evolve to a higher level of understanding or of what they need and are, they need a process, and I can't take that process away. You can, no one can. So I need to find the opportunity, or build my opportunity to put that knowledge forth. And then the problem is that, you know, that becomes marketing, that becomes yet another job rather than what I'm good at. I need somebody maybe who can help me to define what the schools would be. Like I'm always thinking I should be the Montessori school of dance, rather than being any of these institutions that already exist. There is no model for me. I am my model, and many people steal from me. I can tell you that anybody who works with me, I see that people steal, constantly use what I give them. Many get much better credibility than I do. Like Sidi Larbi is an example. You know Sidi Larbi
Mhm.
Sharkawi? He's a choreographer, very well known. Now he works with Beyonce. He works with everybody in the world. He makes movies. He works for Cirque du Soleil. But everything he does is something I taught him.
Mm.
I simply never had the resources or the backup behind me to put my knowledge somewhere. He had. So the information I've given him has given him a career. I'm not credited for it, but I can see it because it is my knowledge, it is my experience, he's built upon it. So I know that it's valid. It's just that I never had the opportunity to really take credit for my knowledge, and not just to take credit, but to have a place to put my knowledge into. And then I have to make finally I had to also make this decision that, like, well, I don't have to look for something to fit into, but I have to find a way to build what I need, to build the house that I want. And so that's actually maybe a good roundup to say, like, well, my trajectory
Yeah,
through this
yeah.
time, it was also a good self-reflection to say, like, well, perhaps that's the next step that I can move towards, not to
Mm.
wait and look for the place, but to create it, to make it. And that's
Thomas, I really hope this wish comes true for you.
it.
Yes, I
Eventually
really. This is
it will.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a, how you say, it's just a different process, and then we'll see. I have to start embarking on it and look for the support, like find my tribe, find the
Yeah.
people that can actually help me and to
Yeah.
make that a reality. And whether
Definitely.
it's here in Brussels or elsewhere, I don't know yet.
Mhm.
That's kind of my next step.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. But
Petra, it
listen,
was lovely talking to you. It's really
yeah,
lovely.
it was so lovely to talk to
Yeah,
you too. And yeah, very, very great that you also see the advantage of education and
yeah,
yeah, I'm glad to hear
yeah,
your opinion on that as well. So great insights. It was
yeah.
wonderful.
But
Yeah.
education is, I think, yeah, you know, everything goes
Yeah.
back to that. Really, I
Yeah.
really believe that our future depends on how well we
Mm.
educate our children and how well we inspire them to also be open-minded and to see these opportunities.